Hi everybody, I'm Trin Johnson and welcome to Dust in My Eye. Today I'm going to be painting a peach. I'm going to be painting it twice actually, the first time in watercolor and the second time in pastel. This is part 1 and it will be the watercolor painting and part 2 will be the pastel painting. I went to the orchards to pick up some peaches. We have a festival in my town this weekend and it's the peach festival, and I like to get my peaches before all the peaches are gone. So I try and beat the crowd, and I got a bag of peaches, and it had this lovely little peach that had 3 little leaves in it, and I went, oh, I have to paint a peach. So that's how we got here. So I am painting on a pad of paper I've never used before. It's made by Speedball. It's called Arnhem 1618, and it is for wet media, and it's 100% rag, but it's not necessarily marketed for watercolor. My husband and I found it when we were in Chile visiting my son and daughter-in-law and new grandbaby. And I went, oh, this is interesting. Let's try this. And then when I got home, I found that it's pretty available. Blix has it. And anyway, I'm going to give it a whirl and see if I like it. So the watercolor painting is going to be a little tighter than the pastel painting. And it kind of serves as a roadmap for when I worked on the pastel painting. It was very helpful to have the watercolor painting. So I'm not trying to do a botanical here. I'm not worried about being really exact. I hope you can see, I have a drawing on there. It's very faint, but it is there. I'm just wetting all the peachy areas where the peaches and not where the leaves are. And I have popped the picture of what I'm painting up in the corner for you, my photo. I want to get an even coat of water wherever I'm putting the peach. But I was unfamiliar with this paper, so I wasn't really sure what I was going to do. Now I'm using a little shell pink here, and I'm also using a little quinacridone coral. Get all my peachy colors together. That's a little Aussie red gold in there. And a little bit of deep scarlet. I've got that in there too. Now I'm just re-wetting a little bit because it's soaked in. And again, I'm not trying to follow the picture exactly. I just am using it for reference as to the colors that are in it and kind of where the shadows are, and so I'm not worried about getting real exact. And I want to use a lot of different versions of the peachy pinky color because that makes it more interesting than if it's just a flat peach color. This way it's got more going on. Get a little of the deep scarlet in there. Now I'm adding a little bit of transpiral orange. A little too dark, needs some water. This was a fun thing to paint. It's pretty simple, so there's not a lot to go wrong. I was trying to get rid of any real harsh edges on the transition from the shadow to the peach, or to the light part of the peach to the shadow part, I should say, the little indent. And now I'm using also a little bit of Venetian red. I really stuck to that corner of the palette pretty much till I added some raw umber and sepia and the greens. You could use a burnt sienna. There's a quin rust. That would be a nice color to use for the dark parts. No, there's another brand. Oh, there's a English red, old English red or something like that. I have in one of my palettes, red, English red earth. That's what it is. That would work too. Now I'm just trying to darken that up a little bit. So I'm added some raw umber. I painted this, and I'm having trouble with the camera I'm using. The sound was messed up. It comes and goes. So I needed to do a voiceover. By the time I'm doing this voiceover, I have painted this peach in watercolor. Then I painted it in pastel. Then I did a little alcoholic one just for fun. Then I did another little watercolor one that was a short. And then I thought that I had gotten rid of the wrong file, and I thought I lost this footage. So I repainted this peach in watercolor. So now I have painted this peach 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times. I kind of have it memorized. I could probably paint it in my sleep, but it actually, the second version of it turned out very much like the first version, which is really strange because usually that doesn't happen. But it was fun. I've been inspired by fruit that, and with it has its leaves on it. I just think it's cool. We got a garnish on a creme brulee once when we went out to dinner, and I carried that thing all the way home from Canada. Kept it refrigerated just so I could get it back here and paint it. and I did. I forget what kind of fruit that was. It was a little berry with paper thin like leaves about the size of a large marble. It was a gooseberry. That's what it was. So I did the little dimple on the peach with a little burnt umber and some sepia. And I'm just trying to smooth out between the light part, the curve of the peach. I don't want a harsh transition there. I'm mixing up my leaf mixtures. This first one is it's green gold, Daniel Smith green gold. And then I have some sap green that I'm putting in the next pot. And then some more sap green. And this one I'm adding some indigo to give it a nice depth, a little darker green. I don't like to use my greens straight out of the tube, but I do like to start with the convenience colors because they're convenient. A little bit of cobalt in there. And a little cobalt in my sap green mixture too. And then I added a little lemon yellow to my green gold mixture. And I was trying to figure out which leaf to paint first and how I wanted to go about it. And I, again, did a clear water to do some wet on wet. And I'm just going over where the leaf is with clear, clean water. Not clear water, clean water. I guess it's clear too. And I'm going to start with the lightest leaf, which is the one that's predominantly green gold. A little more lemon in there. I'm trying to work light to dark here. Always keep a tissue handy to blot things up when they're getting too wet, or I want to get the color pulled back a little bit. I have the windows open and the light is changing. I'm sorry about that. Again, I'm trying to make the leaf more interesting than just a solid color. And I like to do that while it's still wet as much as possible so that I can avoid the harsh lines. And now I'm going to do the same thing with the upper leaf. Wet it first, then go in wet on wet. This one is the darkest of all the leaves. So I was trying to start with my middle color, but I didn't want it quite as dark as I had it. I have two original copies of this, or original copy, that doesn't make sense. Two original artwork pieces of this since I painted it twice. I'm going to try and get these up on my Etsy shop as soon as I can get them photographed, and they will be available for purchase. Along with the pastel, most likely. That one, I have to get that one photographed also. Going back into the first leaf to get the dark parts, and it's still a little bit damp, so they're not making a harsh line. All in all, I really enjoyed this paper. And when I found out what it cost here and how readily available it was, I wasn't sure that that was going to be the case. In Chile, it was all in pesos, and I'm not really good about really knowing how much I'm paying for something. I had to think too hard, and I was like a kid in a candy store down there, and we went to two art supply stores that were pretty near each other, actually. And I found some other paper that I really liked that I went back and bought some more of that, because that is not available in the States. But this is, and it's very reasonable, and I painted on it twice, and I really liked it both times, so that's kind of fun. I don't know if it comes bigger than that. I haven't looked that far into it, but this little pad is definitely available. I'm working on the third leaf in the same manner that I did the other two leaves. And now I'm doing a little bit of lifting to get the highlight back there. And it did that really well too, which was surprising for such a reasonably priced piece of paper. At first I thought it was a block because it was held together so nicely, and then I realized when I did the background that it was actually a pad of paper. That tells you how closely I looked. But it did very nicely. It's also a little bit on the lighter weight side, which surprised me that it did so well, because I usually work on 300 GSM, and this is 200, 245 GSM, 20 sheets. I would definitely buy more of this paper. I really do like it. I'm kind of hoping now it comes in bigger sizes, because this one is just 5x7. Although that's a very convenient size for throwing in a sketch, like a sketchbook, throwing in a travel kit as if it were a sketchbook, only not committed to a sketchbook, so you can pull it out and frame it, etc. Anyway, so far, I really do recommend it. I will try and put a link to the Amazon listing in my description if you're interested. And now I'm trying to get a nice dark color to get that shadow. Because what really makes this peach painting work is the contrast. It's the dark shadow on the peach because it was a very bright day and I put it on the floor, on the wooden floor, and the light was barreling through the window and I got some really nice contrast. And so that's what I really needed to get right to make this work. So I'm really trying to deepen my shadows. And now I think I got that pretty good. So what I'm doing here is wetting the background because again I'm going to go for wet on wet. So I'm just wetting it around the peach and the leaves. I am not going to do a full-on background behind the whole peach. I just wanted like a swath behind it so that the whole peach wasn't surrounded. So I'm only wetting to a point. And again, this paper really, it sucked up the water a little bit. And so I just want to make sure I have just the right amount on there. You want it to glisten, but you don't want it to pool. And now I'm using one of my new colors. I got some new paint. I think it's Schminke. I think. And it's a transparent yellow ochre. I bought a transparent yellow ochre and I also bought an opaque yellow ochre. And I could really tell the difference straight out of the tubes. And then I put them in little, the little pans and didn't label them. And now I'm like, which one is which? But I think I have it identified. I don't know why it was harder to tell, but it was definitely harder to tell once they dried. Which one was the transparent and which one was the opaque. But this one was the transparent one, I'm pretty sure. So anyway, it was a really cool color. And they each have their place. I'm just getting a little bit over the top of that one leaf. Very lightly. And the nice thing about this is it provided a color behind the shadow. When I went to do the shadow, it gave the shadow color more interest and more depth. Now I'm trying to mix up my shadow color, and I'm just going to add to the dark peachy color, and that also will give it some more interesting than just straight brown, more interesting color. And it also is the color that's in the peach, so it's like the shadow is reflecting the color of the peach, which is a nice way to do that. It unites it, it hooks it to the peach, it hooks it to the rest of the painting that way. Now I decided to splash some clean water, clean water, on the background because I didn't want it so flat. And it's subtly mottled now. It worked pretty well with the transparent yellow ochre. Now I'm dabbing it a little bit with a tissue to get some of the extra wetness off of it before I try and paint the shadow. Now I am drying the background because I really wanted it completely dry to do my shadow. I didn't want my shadow leaking into the background because it was a very distinctive shadow. And while I didn't want a really harsh edge, I did want a defined edge, if that makes sense. I was not into the just let it flow kind of shadow, which I like to let things do that a lot on their own, but this instance I did not want that. So I could see that it was dry now. And dry to the touch. Always a good to know, test it for sure if it mattered. And it mattered this time to me. So I'm going to move from left to right here and try and get a little more of the rusty color, the Venetian red in my shadow color, even more than I had. Not as strong as I got it, apparently. I will tissue it up a little bit. It's so interesting to me how that peach was just floating along on the paper and now it's grounded. Just that little bit of shadow that I've done so far, and it just gives it a place to sit. And that's so important. I went a little further than I wanted to, so I'm doing a little lifting here. I'm just trying to make the background look like it did, because there's a little spot there where the background's going to show through. It was an interesting shadow because of the leaves. And I know you can't see the line work, but there's a little light line work under there. I always think I have plenty of paint mixed up, and then I don't. Now I added a little indigo there because I felt like the mix was not quite dark enough, and it really needed that contrast. Shadows are so interesting. They're so odd sometimes. Sometimes they look like a mirror image of what's on what they are, and sometimes they're just an odd, funky shape. I have a lot of my shorts and my full-length video artwork that I'm going to have in my shop. I'm hoping to do a shop update this month. I have a lot of things on my plate right now, but I would like to get that up. So just keep your eye out if you're interested in any of these peaches or any of my other shorts. And like I said, some of my full-length videos also, recent ones. I've been out of town a lot this summer, so not like intentionally. It just ended up that way. Some of it intentionally. We definitely intended to go to Chile to see our new grandbaby. Yeah, now I'm doing the same thing I did with the background, and I'm doing it with the shadow to give it so it's not so flat. But I didn't want it outside of the shadow, so I just need to mop that up a little bit. You can always drop water in where you want to see a drop too. You don't have to just spatter it. That's what I'm doing here, is just trying to get it a little more stirred up so it's not flat. With the peach being so mottled and with so many colors in it, I just wanted to make sure that that wasn't just flat. I didn't like the way that looked. If you liked this video, I would sure like it if you'd hit the like button. And if you want to see more of my videos, it'd be great. And you just have to hit the subscribe button. And if you want to be notified when I have a future video, just hit that cute little bell. And I now have a Buy Me a Coffee link in my description. So if you would like to help me on my artistic journey, that is there also. And much, much appreciated any of that. And please keep an eye out for part 2, the pastel version of this painting. I definitely used this painting as a point of reference, and I think it's really interesting to see how that worked and how it came across in pastels. It's a little bit looser than this one, and it's kind of fun. And even if you're not a pastel artist, I think you might find it interesting because it works the opposite, from dark to light instead of light to dark. I'm just trying to get my the curve. I was trying to work on the curve of the peach at the back end here. I thought it needed some smoothing and trying to get that transition from the shadow a little bit, and yet still keeping that as a shadow. I'm just trying to get that shape a little bit better at the top, because that's the one edge that does not have the background behind it. Now I wanted a little bit of more of the yellow ochre in the shadow. So I'm glazing it kind of over. Well, that's it. I signed my name, and here's a closer view of it finished. And if you'd like to check out my Etsy shop, that would be wonderful. I have prints of my artwork along with some originals and my cute little monsters, along with little tins and all sorts of other fun stuff for sale. So until next time, thanks for watching.